Week where we take a look back at the week that was and helping us unpack all of it, all the events, big stories, and what they might mean is one of our resident commentators, Mighty Jamie. Top of the morning to you, Mighty Jamie. I hope you had a good weekend. Did you run, comrades?
Morning, Peter. Morning to the listeners and viewers. No, I did not run comrades. It's a bit too much for my pay grade in terms of the running. So I typically do the marathons, but Cape Town Marathon is my signature one. That's the one I prepare for. So I'm about 132 days away from Cape Town Marathon. So you can ask me, Cape Town Marathon, Soweto Marathon, those are my signature runs.
But I am pretty sure that comrades is somewhere along your running ambitions.
It doesn't make sense to me, Peter, but if I get to a certain level of fitness, maybe it will. You have to be ultra fit to run that in a reasonable time because, there's different types of runners. There's the ones at the back who everybody watches to see whether they make the cutoff. And there's the guys who are in the middle who are considered to be the serious runners. Obviously, the elite runners are athletes, but I would rather be in the middle in the respectable times than barely scraping through. And that's what I'm training towards.
No, I hear you. I keep every year, I always say I'm going to, but never quite get out my bed. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Well, another marathon has been Central Africa and East Africa, where Rwanda and DRC have always been, not always, have for a long time now been tensions. So Rwanda has now announced its withdrawal from the Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, citing political interference by the DRC after being denied the bloc's rotating chairship, deepening regional tensions amid ongoing conflict in the eastern Congo. How do you think this withdrawal from ECAS impacts regional diplomacy amid this ongoing tensions between Rwanda and the DRC?
I think this development, Peter, will be something that definitely takes things backwards. It's a retrogressive development, and one I think that underscores some of the questions we were asking when we heard that the DRC and Rwanda were going to be able to sign some version of a deal because of the Americans' involvement. And it actually puts to question whether or not the American hopes and dreams were a little bit exaggerated or maybe naive in and of themselves. Because on the one hand, you say that you're going to sign this peace deal and it's supposed to be happening later this month in June, the signing of the deal, if everything goes according to schedule. But then on the other hand, you have this massive meeting of these states and, you've got 11 members in here and Rwanda comes out of the meeting saying, we were supposed to take the chairpersonship. It's a rotating chairpersonship. You've now given it to Equatorial Guinea to continue. They're the current sitting leaders of that entity. And then at the same time, you make this declaration that we are, occupying the eastern parts of the DRC, which is something that is not quite conceded to by the Rwandese. So in and of itself, when you look at the dynamics here, this particular move seems to rather give indications or circumstantial evidence, if not hard evidence, that the relationship between the DRC and Rwanda right now is actually worsening, not improving. And I don't know how you could draw any other conclusion than that. Rwanda typically went onto social media and expressed its discontent around this whole thing, airing that, this was not done in a manner which goes in line with the constitution of that particular entity and all of its charters. It's a rotating seat, so to say this thing is supposed to rotate. They typically, and when I say they, I mean Kagame, he keeps grudges and he can hold on to things for a period of time. So on this side of things, it looks as if things are worsening. What could be driving this is that we've seen now the former president of the DRC meeting with the M23 rebels, playing a role of mediator and broker. And this leads to questions around whether or not all of this is now taking a different shape and whether Tshisekedi feels threatened now that, Kabila will come back through the M23 or try to push a secession movement through the M23. I thought it was really interesting to see Kabila having these meetings with the M23 rebels, trying to play a role either as a leader or whatever the case may be. And I think that could be an indication as well that all of the moving pieces are beginning to take shape in ways that indicate that Tshisekedi feels that he has to take a strong and hard line against the leadership of the DRC as opposed to of Rwanda, as opposed to a reconciliatory one. As to whether or not the Americans can resolve this impasse later on this month, if they can sign a deal, it's beginning to look like they will bump into the rest of the problems that everyone has bumped into. I don't know how they'll respond to this. I don't think it's on Trump's radar in the same way that South Africa was, for instance. We'll have to see.
All right, then there's the thorny issue of Morocco and Western Sahara. And we're seeing Ghana, the latest country to endorse Morocco's autonomy plan as the exclusive UN framework for resolving the Western Sahara conflict, aligning with an increasing number of Western, African and Arab nations. But I know for sure that many countries across Africa are with Western Sahara and the Polisario Front. How do you think this is going to play out with more and more countries seemingly siding with Rabat?
Well, I'm not sure how it's going to play out, because I think right now what we are seeing is a fragmentation of the view of how this issue should be resolved on the continent. As you said, countries like South Africa are very much in support of the current position of the Polisario movement, and they are not necessarily going to support this. We know Algeria also is not in favor of this. So in as much as we've seen France, in as much as we've seen a few other countries, now Ghana coming to say they support Morocco's version of how to resolve this conflict, I don't think that takes us much further to resolving the conflict. And it may actually be a strong position for Morocco to have this, because at a certain point, it seemed as if the whole of Africa was navigating to one side of the equation and supporting the emancipation of Western Sahara. So now if you divide the room, if you can get significant African players like Ghana to say, we don't support this, and other countries maybe which are looking for maybe the support of America, the support of France, also saying, okay, we can actually split from the consensus position, that puts Morocco in a stronger position, because right now they are already in control of most of the area. They are already in a position where they're taking economic benefits from the area. So Western Sahara right now, I think the independence movement basically has taken a significant blow from the fact that Ghana now has shifted or is going a different direction to what seemed to be the consensus view on the African continent. I don't know how countries like South Africa will respond to this. These two stories that we're covering now have similar tones or themes, because now we're seeing Francophone Africa willing to go a different direction, Anglophone Africa willing to go a different direction. Those kind of confrontations undermine the bigger project that these African leaders have said they want to work on, which is this intercontinental trade, regional integration. If we get to a point where Africa is back to Anglophone, Francophone, North Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, in terms of geopolitical views and Pan-African ideological views, we're back to where we were in 63. Basically, if you recall, one of the debates was what should be the nature of the African Union. And I think many people view that the idea that we should just focus on independence and not economic integration at the time is one of the things that prevented the economic integration from a trade perspective of African nations. And if you have this segmentation, fragmentation of viewpoints, as what seems to be the case in both of these stories, it could mean that in 2025, we're seeing a regression in Pan-African ideals, Pan-African movements, and economic aspirations.
Okay, and then Russia's Wagner Group has pulled out of Mali, claiming that it's completed its mission to support the military against jihadists. They've been there since, I think, 2021, helping stabilize the country, they say. I wonder what your thoughts are, though, on what it might mean for Mali's security and stability, because I don't know that this jihadist issue has been dealt with in any of the Sahel states.
No, which is why this announcement from Wagner Group is a little bit surprising, because them saying that they've helped, everything is fine now. It's like the referee saying he's finished adjudicating the match at halftime. I don't think that we can realistically say that anything has improved in Mali in terms of the security conditions. I don't think we can realistically say that now the extremist groups within the Sahel region have been subdued and that we have peace and stability and that the military and police in the different countries are in full control. We're still seeing reports of attacks. We're still seeing reports of people who are unable to go back to their homes because of the operations and movements of these groups. So I think the impact will definitely be something negative to Mali's security, because Mali also chased away the French support, and that was an issue of consternation. The French were like, well, we're trying to help you guys, we're trying to train your people. But as we know, the relationship between France and some West African nations, particularly those who were former colonies of France, is very damaged. And this whole shift to Russia was supposed to be something that poses a significant reset and potentially stabilization. Russia was very good in Syria, where they helped the Assad regime really to subdue ISIL. But maybe what this could be in the removal of the Wagner group is that this allows for Putin to send in a formal contingent of Russian troops and the formal Russian army, as opposed to this militia group which was operating on the side. It may also mean that Russia has determined that in the short to medium term, all of their resources need to be focused on the fight with Ukraine. We saw some instances there where, Ukraine was using drone strategies to launch attacks, which seemed to have been very damaging. We saw Trump say that there's going to be a retaliation from Russia as a result of that. So maybe this is just a realignment of Russia's short-term to medium-term security interests, because if you're still stuck in Ukraine, you may need to focus all of your energy on that. And the Wagner group was a critical part of those Russian-Ukraine missions. So that could be the reason, not necessarily that everything has been fixed. This could just be their saving face narrative, Peter.
All right, and then the final one. I mean, there's a lot being said about this 12-country ban by Donald Trump, banning a number of countries, including some African countries, people from those countries entering the United States, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and others. What's your take on this? I do think, though, that perhaps there's not enough context to this, because whilst these countries are mentioned, I'm pretty sure when you compare the number of people who maybe overstayed from Chad compared to the United Kingdom, thousands more Britons overstayed in the US compared to Chad. So I'm not sure what this story tells us, and maybe we might be overcooking it a little bit.
Well, I mean, this is in line with Donald Trump's political promises to his base. He wants refugees and he wants immigrants from particular types of countries. If you recall, at some point he said he wants refugees from Norway or Sweden, or something to that effect, right? So he views that America should prioritize European descent immigrants as opposed to anybody else, because they change the shape and culture of the American environment. We've seen even Marco Rubio saying that they want to have people who can assimilate with American culture, as opposed to just having refugees from Haiti or refugees from Sudan or any other part of the world, which doesn't necessarily conform with his understanding of what European culture and Americanism or Americana is. So, Peter, the most interesting thing I saw when I was looking at the overstay reports, because the Homeland Security Department publishes every year the overstays, is there were 131,000 overstays actually from India. They had a lot of people coming in, and as a percentage, it was a low number of overstays if you're looking at overstays as a percentage. But a percentage can be misleading, because 1 out of 10 is 10%. But 1,000 out of 10,000 is also 10%. And if you're trying to reduce the number of people in your space who are, not there legally and maybe changing the culture of your country, you may want to focus not only on the raw percentage, but also on the absolute number. So India was one of the big overstay countries. The UK was one of the big overstay countries. Canada and Mexico were also large in terms of overstay, because they're sending way more volumes of people. So while their percentages seem lower, when you look at the absolute numbers, those absolute numbers were significantly higher. Also, some of the arguments around the security controls and trying to make sure that these countries which are sending whatever, visitors, business travelers, whatever the case may be, have better vetting for their visas and passports. One of the attackers in last week's attack, or was it 2 weeks ago? I don't remember when this attack happened, was from Egypt. And Egypt is not one of the countries which has faced constraints. So it looks as if Trump has given his base something that they can then say, yes, we're definitely banning these Muslim and Indian countries, black and brown, or restricting them. It looks like that at face value. If you look at some of the rationale for why it was done, it's inconsistent across the board. Nigeria, for example, also has a large number of overstays. However, it's not on the list. So Egypt, Nigeria off the list. The presence of Sudan and Haiti on the list were worrying to me because there's ongoing crises in those countries. We know that Sudan has the largest humanitarian crisis right now in the world. They need help, not restrictions.
All right. So typical Trump rationale. We won't even go into his drama with Elon Musk. That's a topic for another day. Jamie, we're going to have to leave it there. Always great talking to you. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
Pleasure. Have a good one.
Have a good week, my brother. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Dwalani.